Okay, so in this tutorial, we're going to keep working over our pseudocode, kind of going through that iterative process until we've got it to the point that it can until we feel good about it meeting all the requirements that we need and there's nothing weird about it. Okay, so if you remember from last time, the issue that we ran into is the fact that in certain situations, the change speed, if the change speed is big enough, we can end up with a final change amount, or we can end up with the object being bigger than our specified final change amount, which we don't want. So then you just try to think through, okay, well, it's going to end up being too big. So let's just create a condition to handle for that. So then the problem is that it can sometimes be greater than that. Current change amount can sometimes be greater than final change amount, and then it can get set. So we can just create a condition that prevents that. So we'll just go here, if, oops, that was weird, if current change amount is greater than final change amount, and then we can just set current change amount equals final change. Oh, so remember, we're not going to use any syntax in here, only sentences. Equals final change amount. So as long as we've got this process thought through correctly, we now have line by line pseudocode for everything that we need to do, and we think we've handled all the conditions that we could come up with. Of course, you're never going to be able to think of every condition, but it's more just the repetition of going and trying to think of things that could break it. And then before your pseudocode is finished, there's one other kind of process that you want to go through, and this is also really important, is, okay, we think everything in here will work correctly, but then you have to ask, okay, is there a way that I can simplify what I have here? And one of the big ways that usually you end up simplifying is you saying, okay, are there portions of this functionality that I'm writing myself that I could use built-in components of the engine for? So, and the way that you figure that out is really, to be honest, through experience. You start to build up a library of functions that you're familiar with, and then you'll be looking over your pseudocode and you'll say, oh, wait, I've experienced this before. Actually, I can use this built-in function, and that will clean this up. And in this case, there is a built-in function that serves the exact same purpose as these two lines, and that function is called clamp. We go over to the engine here, we go clamp unity, or sorry, over to the browser, and you can see the documentation. So what clamp does is you give it a minimum value and a maximum value, and then it clamps it to a value somewhere in between. So you can see where what we have is we have a value that's over a maximum value, and if it is, if it's over the maximum value, it's going to clamp it to that. So this will basically solve that problem for us in a more built-in way and kind of a more standardized way. So let's go back to our pseudocode and try to make this work using clamp. So we could do it here, but actually that's not necessary. We could just do it where we're setting it. So instead of changing the value, we're just going to clamp current change amount to make sure it's not greater than final change amount, and then we can set it. So we can even just add this as just a reference, because we'll know how to use the function. So we'll just do clamp current change amount to less than final change amount, less than or equal to final change amount, then set current change amount. So then we can get rid of this and clean clean up our syntax a little bit. Okay. So now we pretty much have line by line, we have line by line descriptions, we have our overview of what's going to happen where, we have our requirements up here. We can say that our pseudocode meets all of our requirements and that we've gone through and made sure that there's no issues. There was nothing that we could think of that would break our code, and we found a way to simplify our code. So, and I'm sure just from your experience, you could think of other ways to go through this process, and that you can think of better ways to do this. But the whole idea is just giving yourself a more rigorous process to go through when you're coming up with functionality. And I would recommend, as quickly as possible, picking a few simple things inside of the Unity engine and going through this process a few times. We'll go through it in the tutorials as well, but if there's a single thing that you could iterate on that'll make you better faster, it's this process that we've just gone through. And so now that we have this, since this is just a line-by-line description, we can pretty much start turning this into functionality, which is what we are going to do in the next tutorial.